Hello friends of the electrified charging fun and welcome to Electrified Speicher, your channel all around Skoda's e-mobility. My name is Matthias and this is a response to my community that I take criticism seriously, but that I also say don't forget the facts. And this refers to the video I did about the change at the ELROQ 85 when they switched the 77 kilowatts battery from LG Chem with 175 kilowatts charging power to the one from Cuttle or CATL with 135 kilowatts. And oh boy, I didn't see that coming, because on the German channel and in German social media and forums, and especially in my inbox, there was a lot of stuff going on. A lot of criticism, a lot of emotional comments and answers. And the fun fact is, this was the complete opposite here on the English channel. Here the video was very well received. A lot of people thanked me for the explanations. Some had a bit of a question left, but they said, well, it's nice that someone told me the facts and did an analysis and then did a conclusion with his opinion. And since I'm trying to do both videos on both channels, I will cut this video a bit down to the essentials, because I don't have the need to go into some deep stuff I have on the German channel with all that what was going on. But I think you might imagine what I'm talking about. But let's head into this video and I'll give you brief answers to some questions which you still might have left in your brain thinking about, should I take the ELROQ 85 with a lower peak charging power or not? Here we go. So first off, just because I want to, and maybe you're interested in it, what was going on the German channels, forums and in the inbox? Well, there was a lot of feedback, critical, emotional and loud. And that's okay, because it shows that the topic resonates. And I wanted to address a few of those points. I did that in the comments. I wrote long and exhausting emails to some people. But in the end, I forgot to see how much emotion is behind all of this topic, and that not everyone cares about tech and technology and physics. And I have to admit, I underestimated that. And so one thing I want to make clear here is, of course I have a passion for Skoda's e-mobility. Well, you clearly hear that in the first 5 seconds of my channel. And if someone chooses such a niche, he is better well informed and convinced about that what he is doing. But that does not mean that I'm blindly just a public relation guy. And of course I am not employed at Skoda, nor am I speaking for them. I'm a freelancer. I do that on my own here. Yes, I am some sort of content creator and influencer, yet I am a freelancer and I'm doing it for myself, not for Skoda. And just to show you, if you're new to the channel, how things work here. On my channel, the process is rather simple. First, I gather all the facts, all the data, all the evidence I can find on something. And I try to prove it over and over again. Then I analyze. And then I deliver an evaluation and with that an opinion. That's the job, at least from my point of view, of an influencer and content creator. I know some might skip the first 2 steps, but I will never do that. And if this is positive more than once, all of this, I will be labeled a fanboy. If it is negative more than once, I am the opposite of this. The golden middle ground, almost impossible to reach for me. So I do what I can do best, just do my thing. And if that resonates with you, well, it will work. And therefore my videos are more or less nuanced, highlighting both sides, the good, the bad, the ugly. And in the case of that peak charging power video, well, yes, it was a positive for Skoda on the technical side, because that's simply based on the data I have. And it was negative for Skoda on the communication side, because they are not talking to their customers. So that was at least my view, but that was not the view in the German community. And so I got a lot of points mentioned, and let's address them rather quick, even though if you might not ask these questions, because the answers are already clear to you. The first question asked was, Will residual value, so the resale value of my car, drop because 135 is a smaller number than 175? People care about that, so I get less money when I sell my car later on. But let's be honest, if you sell your ELROQ 85 in 5 or 7 or 10 years from now, that does not really matter. First off, the value of a car isn't defined by its peak charging speed. Way more, it is defined by range, efficiency, build quality, software updates. Hear me, Skoda? Software updates? A big deficit here. Daily usability, brand image, and especially other factors when we talk about a 7-year-old or 5-year or 10-year-old electric car. The first thing people will ask you here is battery health. What is the state of the battery? How much capacity is left? That is of interest. And when I talk to dealers, I know some of them, they will tell me this is something they really ask. And when they ask about charging, well, the question goes like, how long does it take? And another thing which is way more important, point B, the availability of newer models. If in 7 years newer models for the same price like you ask for your used car are available, which are better, well, you are in a bad place. No one can tell that from today if that will be. And the last thing is, if not, well, then the benchmark counts. So the market competition of other used cars. And these are the today's new cars. So when you compare them to today's cars, you will see how they might perform when you sell them as a used car. And the last thing here, Skoda definitely needs to communicate that the 135 kilowatts charging power is not a downgrade, to help the market understand the switch. And another point, for those who are really uncertain here, don't buy an electric car in the current market. That is an advice I give everyone. Lease it, look for a subscription model, something like that. There are great options available. They might be a bit more expensive, but you're on the safe side not to care about the residual value or the resale value of a car, because we currently live in a rapidly changing EV world because technology improves really, really fast, like it did in the early years of the combustion engine. Next point was that people stated, but there are cars with much higher charging power, even twice the charging power. And yes, while this is true, you should compare fair. When comparing charging performance, be fair to say, I compare the same price segment. What do I get for the money? You can't compare an ELROQ 85 to an Ioniq 5. The prices are, at least in the markets I know, different. You can't get an Ioniq 5 for the same price you get on ELROQ. And the second thing is, stick to the test standards. In our case, that's 10 to 80%. Manufacturers seem to comply to that 10 to 80 rule. Not everyone, because you see so many different values on, like 20 to 8 or 30 to 8 or recharge 100 kilometers in 9 minutes or this or that. All marketing doesn't care. We need a standard, and this is the most common use case out there. And the most common use case is not 0 to 40 or 20 to 60. It is 10 to 20 and then up to 80. At least when you look at charging provider data, how people really charge. And of course I can find the optimal SoC range for every EV out there, where it charges definitely much faster than in another range. But that makes true comparisons impossible. And here are some examples from the market when we stick to that rule, price segment and test standard. Kia EV3 is a competitor, a hard competitor of the Skoda ELROQ. You see dozens of videos on this on YouTube. And it's a compact SUV, it's under 40k euros, and the peak charging power of that car is 128 kilowatts. And when we look to the Chinese manufacturers, take BYD. No, the Sea Lion 7 or the Seal U are not the competitors of the ELROQ, but of the ENYAC. The real competitor would be the Atto 3, 88 kilowatts peak charging power. Let's head over to Smart, another Chinese manufacturer. Hashtag 3. Not really, but at least something of a competition, 130 or 150 kilowatts peak charging power. Maybe you even say the hashtag 5 might be a competitor. But only in the upper segment you get the high charging power. The small hashtag 5, which could be a competition, 150 kilowatts, because it does not have the 800 volts technology. This is only for the higher hashtags 5. Renault Scenic E-Tech, 130 to 150 kilowatts. Most cars in this class are between 100 and 150 kilowatts of peak charging power when we compare peak. But should we? But peak is not what counts. Peak versus reality at the charger is something I cannot stress enough. A car that reaches 250 kilowatts for a moment is like a sprinter over 100 meters. But if you're going on the 5,000 meter run, you want endurance. Our sprinter will lose a lot of power along that long distance. And charging an EV is not a sprint, it's a marathon. In most cases. Certain cases might be sprints, but for the vast majority, it is not a sprint. What matters here on a marathon is how long can you do it? And therefore, how much energy is added over time, or how many miles or kilometers are added over time. Your average charging power. This is the only value which really counts. And then look at several SOC ranges. It is never the peak. It is always the duration from a point X to a point Y. That defines real-world charging speed. And therefore I said we need a standard. We can pick any, but the industry has decided 10 to 80 should be it. And when we look at 10 to 80 with the ELROQ 85 with a 135 kilowatts battery, that car outperforms many others because most cars at that charging range have 30 minutes plus in its price segment. And again, I want to give you two examples. Some mentioned to me, some German viewers, I go with the best in class here, and this is for me BMW i5. First off, this is not a comparable car to the ELROQ. It's way out of its league. It's not even the real competitor to an ENYAC. But let's stick with that. Let's ignore price segment. And they told me this can charge to 205 kilowatts, a whopping 70 kilowatts more. It's so much better. Well, if we look at the BMW website, we can see, yeah, it's true. Peak power is 205 kilowatts. And then, what does the manufacturer states 10 to 80? Well, it's 30 minutes. Whoa, your i5 just got 2 minutes worse than your ELROQ 85 with this bad battery of 135 kilowatts. I like that example because it shows if you look at the wrong value, you get the wrong conclusion. And another super example is, of course, the Model 3 Highland and the Model Y Juniper. A lot of charging tests have been done. You'll find them online. And especially one YouTuber here from Switzerland just recently, unfortunately only in German, released a video where he compared the Model Y Juniper with the ENYAC 85X. I know this is not a perfect comparison for our use case here. The 85X has the 175 kilowatts battery. But according to that logic, 250 kilowatts on the Model Y versus 275 kilowatts on the ENYAC is also 75 kilowatts less charging power. So the Model Y should outpace the ENYAC like charm, but it didn't. This channel called Vision eDrive, you may want to look at them here on YouTube, but again, it's only a German channel. I really like them. Silvan is the guy behind that channel, provided me that data, so big thanks to him. And he plugged in the ENYAC with 17% and the Model Y with 16%. That 1% doesn't matter. Yes, you can now criticize that he plugged them in at an Ionity. By the way, Silvan is an experienced Tesla driver who had a Model 3 for a long period of time. He knows what he's doing. I will talk about that in a minute. So he plugged them there in. And the result was, like you see here, 17 to 80 for the ENYAC took less than 26 minutes. 16 to 80 with the Tesla took 31 minutes. And the Tesla went up to 192 kilowatts of power. The charger could provide over 205 like the BMW. Tesla didn't ask for that. Why? You can look at several other charging tests. The 250 kilowatts are only available around 0% to 3 or 4% SOC. Afterwards, it already starts to drop. And it only reaches this by not comply to the CCS standard. So if you would do the same test on Tesla superchargers, the result would be the same. And I recently watched from a German YouTuber, Nico Pliquet, maybe you know him, a video on charging the Model Y Uniper from 0 to 80, and he showed, well, from 10 to 80, it's also 31 minutes if you start by 0%. So two really good examples for peak versus duration. One critique really often mentioned on the German channel was there is more than 10 to 80. So, well, I did it for you. I have charging data to compare. And just keep in mind, you will always find the best SoC range, like for a Tesla, from 5 to 60% and so on. But if we want to compare, we always have to compare real-world scenarios. But this is not about this. This is about another thing. I took all the charging curves, the real data I have from you, because you sent them to me, from my own tests, from both batteries, and approximated the integral behind it and did the calculation for you. And in this table here, you see the calculated values from different SoC ranges and which car is faster than the other. And how average charging performance really played out. And when you look at this, you see if you are the guy who tends to plug in rather early, so 20% plus SoC, and a lot of people who start with an EV are those, and charge to rather higher SoCs like 70 or 80%, you're way better off with a 135 kilowatts battery. If you are an experienced driver who tends to plug in between 0 and 10% and only charges to 40 or let's say 60%, you might be better off with a 175 kilowatts battery. If you are the average EV driver, according to all the data from the CPOs I have, well, it doesn't matter at all. So yes, it depends a bit on the use case which battery is better, but the reality is you will more often plug in with a higher SoC than with a lower one. And you will more often charge to higher SoCs than to smaller ones. Of course, this does not apply for all. It's only a rule of thumb. It's a complete different thing if we ask the question, is 135 or even 175 kilowatts peak charging and 28 minutes from 10 to 80% still state of the art compared to the available technology on the market in 2025? Because here the answer from me is quite clear. No, it is not. It is outdated. Yet, when you look at the available technology, there is way more possible, but you don't find that in cars. This is not a problem of the ELROQ nor Skoda. 10 to 80% in this segment with 30 minutes of charging time is still the standard on the market. And this is what I compare. I do not compare what might be possible if you put in another technology or a new battery type from a manufacturer, because simply you cannot buy it as of today. Why should I compare it with that? But for the sake of it, let's do it, because in the end it is true. If you look what battery manufacturers are offering, even for the 400 volts system, not talking about 800 volts, which is a complete different story, there is way more possible. And if we talk about that, we talk about batteries with 2C or even 3C of charging. If you are now a bit confused what this means, let me put that in easy words. In the end, it's simply a ratio. If you say I can charge my battery with 1C, you are saying I can charge from 0 to 100% in 1 hour. So with a 77 kilowatts hour battery, this means you charge with an average of 77 kilowatts. If you have 2C, well, you charge in half an hour. So you have 154 kilowatts average charging speed. This is what it means. And yes, this is available for those batteries. And with our current ELROQ and ENIACs, since they charge with the average speed of 124 kilowatts, well, we are at 1.6, 1.7C. And yes, this is outdated in 2025. But you cannot simply switch the cells, the modules, the battery in a platform. This needs time, and a lot of time. Therefore, you see the average of now is 30 minutes, 10 to 80%, even though the technology with the regarded price is available. And therefore, I don't compare what might be, but what is. And to be honest, yes, Volkswagen and Skoda needs to step up their game here. And therefore, Klaus Selmer already said in the interview with me, MEB Plus is coming. And this is a highly needed bridge platform, let's call it this way, until they have their new platform at the end of the decade, the SSP/Rivian platform. And the MEB Plus, I'm pretty sure, is more or less only about charging time, charging power, and range. You won't see big new electric machines in there and stuff like that. I doubt that. And they had to go with this platform. They have to go to 20 minutes or even less. Yes, on a 400 volt system to be still competitive. Will we see the ELROQ or ELROQ on MEB Plus? Again, I doubt it, because they've got a facelift right now. I bet we will see ELROQ and ELROQ the next time on the new platform, the SSP/Rivian platform. And the other thing within the Volkswagen Group and all its group politics, not every brand gets every technology when it's available. So it might be that Skoda has to come later because Volkswagen wants to be the shiny star of this story. So yeah, let's see where this will head. But again, it's better to compare what is available on the market right now than what would be available in technology right now, but is not in any car. Okay, next one is a hard one. The dealers got a data sheet to inform the customers about the differences of the batteries. And of course, people saw that. You can see it in the configuration online. And then the question came, but Matthias, the 175 kilowatts battery has more range and more consumption. So I assume the 135 kilowatts battery does not have 77 kilowatts of energy. There needs to be a difference. And I'll go here with the data from the German dealers. And if you look at that data, you can see, yes, the 175 kilowatts charging peak battery has 8 to 11 kilometers more of range. And 0.07 kilowatt hours to 0.16, I don't know, exactly 14, I guess, kilowatts, 100 kilometers more consumption. And now you might say, yes, therefore, the battery with 135 kilowatts charging power has less capacity. It's not a 77 kilowatt hours battery. And the question was, can you explain? Yes, I can, of course. First off, no, both batteries offer around 77 kilowatt hours of usable energy. And there already was the word around, because usable energy is not a constant. It's not like 50 liters in your gasoline tank. Energy varies depending on several factors. And since the test, the WLTP test, or the will be with exact same conditions like temperature and speeding and time, well, there is another difference. These cells come from different manufacturers, so they might be slightly different in cell chemistry. And just that, again, can already lead to 1 or 2% difference. And since WLTP is a test with many variables, well, here it depends on the battery management system, temperature control, the cell resistance, tire rolling resistance, test variants used for homologation, because we don't know how Skoda did the homologation for both batteries, both cars. Maybe there was another brand of tires on the car. Maybe the one was with 19, the other was 20-inch rims. We don't know, and therefore difference can occur. Of course, Skoda will try to get the best value, so they will go with the best setup, but at the end, we don't know. And see the big overlap between those ranges of range and consumption. It could also be test tolerance. And in the end, let's be honest, arguing over in the middle of 9 kilometers WLTP range or 0.1 kilowatt hours 100 kilometers is like splitting hairs. 0.1 kilowatt hours is 100 watt hours. This is 10 milliliters of diesel. You would not even talk about that with a combustion engine. You do not even talk about range. Have you ever looked at the stats for combustion engines? They don't state range. But if they would, we would have the same discussions over and over again. Some people stated, but what if Skoda updates the charging curves later? Then I'm better off with a 175 kilowatts battery. And this is often asked, and to understand that, we have to dive a bit in the history of the MEB platform. First, when they started out in the market in November 2020, there was only one battery available. That was the LG Chem battery, now known as the 175 kilowatt charging power battery. That was in every ELROQ until mid-2021, when they switched after their holidays in the production plant. This is around August of a year, to the next model generation. The CATL battery, now known as the 135 kilowatts battery, just got introduced with the model year 2022. And in the early stages, these cars, before model year 2022 came to the market, had 50 kilowatts DC charging power. Took 45 minutes to charge them up. 125 kilowatts was optional for surcharge. And they changed to the model year 2022, then every model got 125 kilowatts charging power. And after they did this, bringing the CATL battery to the 80 model, and the 80X model had the LG Chem, the durations changed. Well, first off, the 80 had 29 minutes, and the 80X had 37 minutes charging time. There was no update. This was an option you could buy. Now it got standard. The update occurred when they brought the software version 3.0 into the cars round about August 2022 ongoing. And there they raised the charging power of the LG Chem from 125 to 175 kilowatts. This is what people refer to. But in the end, this battery could only hold the 175 rather short period, and only in a small window where all parameters need to match perfectly. And therefore they dropped the charging time from 37 to 35 minutes, not more. And this is it. Then in August 2023, the model year 24 with a technical facelift hit the market. And with that, they started to change again. First, the CATL battery has 135 kilowatts charging power right now with 28 minutes. And there they improved the LG Chem battery on cell chemistry level. This battery has a new cell chemistry, therefore it's a new cells in there. And this is easy to prove. You can look at the LG Chem datasheet. And with that, they were able to keep the 175 kilowatts way longer and go down to 28 minutes as well. This was not a software update, this is a new chemistry in the battery. So when I have to put a conclusion and an opinion from my personal view on this, the chances that there will be a pure software update to get more charging power is not very likely. And since the 175 kilowatts is already at a thermal limit as tests show, well, it could easier be that the 135 might get an update. But again, I can't say, it could be, but when I look at that history, chances are few that there will something happen. I bet we will only see better charging times with, again, a new cell chemistry in the battery, or even a complete new battery. So my conclusion out of all of this is, yes, I underestimated the emotions way too much, and I overestimated the technical knowledge too much, at least in the German market and on the German channel. And I bet even in the early days of the combustion engine, there was no difference when switching from horses over, just without social media. And I bet this is one of the most important points and lessons learned for me. Because you have echo chambers on social media helping you with every opinion, helping you with every belief to be true. But, well, let's come to a bottom line here. Yes, 135 kilowatts sounds smaller, but in many cases, for the vast majority and most use cases, it's actually the smarter everyday choice. I'm still sticking to this conclusion. You don't have to like that. You don't have to like the ELROQ 85. Out there are so many other great EVs to choose from. But to be fair here, you will find problems like this on every other EV. And if you are really looking for splitting hairs and every issue, I bet you won't be even happy with them. So maybe for you, if you are like that, this is not the time to switch to an EV. For every other person, well, this is a great time to switch to an EV because we have a variety of cars on the market. We have a rather good infrastructure which gets better every day. We can charge more and more regenerative energy, which got more every day. Of course, it's not 100%, but which got more every day. So we are heading towards, at least from my point of view, great future for EVs. And if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't like it, well, it's okay. And consider to subscribe if you do not want to miss out all the videos I mentioned in this one, all the new content, because next week I will start with a complete different topic. How to Skoda EV, a series for everyone who wants to start out their journey on an EV from Skoda or is switching over from another brand. This is not technical deep dives or stuff like that. This is simply showing you how the car works, what secrets the car has, what to set, what to do. A lot of questions answered, and not everything is in this video, but a lot. It's a series of 8 episodes covering all the topics, and I bet this is something you might enjoy if you start out your journey with a Skoda EV, and this is something great to share with others who start their journey. And I hope we see each other in those videos, and until then, stay full of energy.